Pain. That was the first thing Lily Carter felt. A sharp, splitting headache throbbed behind her eyes as if someone had taken a hammer to her skull. She groaned softly and tried to move, but her body felt strangely heavy and unfamiliar. Wait. Unfamiliar? Lily's eyes snapped open. The ceiling above her was not the cracked white plaster of her tiny rented apartment. Instead, an enormous crystal chandelier glittered overhead, its light soft and expensive looking. Her heart skipped. Where am I? Her voice came out hoarse, but delicate, far more gentle than her usual tone. Lily froze. That wasn't her voice. A cold ripple ran down her spine. She sat up abruptly and nearly screamed when she saw her reflection in the massive mirror across the room. The woman staring back at her was beautiful. Pale skin. Long silky hair. Elegant features that looked like they belonged to a wealthy socialite. Not Lily Carter, the overworked office employee who had just collapsed from exhaustion after pulling 3 all-nighters in a row. Memories suddenly flooded her brain. Not her memories. Another woman's memories. Marriage. Humiliation. Cold indifference. The Gray family. Ethan Gray. Within seconds, Lily understood. I transmigrated. She pressed a hand to her forehead, breathing slowly as the situation settled into place with shocking clarity. The original owner of this body, also named Lily Carter, had married into the powerful Gray family 3 months ago. It was a business marriage, arranged to save her struggling family. But the husband, Ethan Gray, the famous young CEO, had never once treated her like a real wife. The original Lily had been deeply in love with him. She had chased him, begged for his attention, humiliated herself over and over. And in the end, she died from despair and illness. Silence filled the luxurious bedroom. Then, what an idiot. Lily lay back down on the soft bed, completely calm. Love? Chasing men? Humiliating herself? Absolutely not. If fate had thrown her into the body of a rich man's wife, then she would do exactly one thing. Live comfortably. And get paid. Just then, a knock sounded on the door. Madam, breakfast is ready. Young master is already downstairs. Lily blinked slowly. So soon. She glanced at the elegant wardrobe, then at herself in the mirror again. Her lips curved slightly. All right, she murmured. Let's meet the husband. When Lily walked into the dining room, the atmosphere instantly turned cold. 3 people were already seated. Margaret Gray, sharp eyes, rigid posture, the unmistakable aura of a powerful matriarch. Grandma Gray, elderly but warm-looking, though her gaze was still shrewd. And at the head of the table, Ethan Gray. He was even more striking than the memories suggested. Tall, composed, wearing a perfectly tailored black suit. His expression was indifferent, as if nothing in the world could interest him. Including his wife. Margaret's lips pressed into a thin line the moment she saw Lily. You're late. In the past, the original Lily would have panicked and apologized repeatedly. But this Lily simply walked over calmly and sat down. Good morning, she said politely. The table went quiet. Ethan's eyes finally lifted. For the first time since she entered. His gaze lingered on her face for half a second longer than necessary. Strange. Very strange. Margaret frowned. You seem different today. Lily picked up her coffee elegantly and took a small sip before answering. People change. Simple. Calm. Unbothered. Grandma Gray's eyes flickered with interest. Margaret clearly didn't like this new attitude. She was about to speak again when Lily suddenly turned her gaze toward Ethan. Straightforward. Businesslike. Since we're already married, Lily said calmly, I think we should clarify one thing. Ethan's brows lifted slightly. This was new. Go on, he said coolly. Lily placed her cup down gently. I won't interfere with your life, she said. And I won't cause you trouble. Margaret looked stunned. This was completely opposite of Lily's usual clingy behavior. Ethan's eyes narrowed slightly. And, he asked. Lily met his gaze directly, her expression perfectly composed. In return, she said, I would like a reasonable monthly allowance. Silence exploded across the dining room. Margaret nearly choked. Grandma Gray's eyes widened. Even Ethan went still. But Lily remained calm inside. Love was unreliable. But money was always honest. After a long pause, Ethan suddenly leaned back in his chair, his gaze deep and unreadable. For the first time, he truly looked at his wife. "You really are different," he said quietly. Lily smiled faintly. Of course she was. Because the woman sitting in front of him now was not the same Lily who had once loved him to death. And for some reason Ethan Gray could not yet explain, he suddenly found this version far more interesting. Lily Carter slept extremely well that night. For the first time in years, well, technically in both lifetimes, she woke up without an alarm screaming in her ear or a pile of unfinished work haunting her dreams. Rich people's mattresses were truly different. She stretched lazily, then sat up, her expression quickly returning to calm calculation. First priority, financial stability. Second priority, avoid unnecessary emotional entanglements. Third priority, absolutely do not fall in love with the cold CEO husband. Simple. Very simple. Just then, her phone buzzed on the nightstand. Lily picked it up and her eyebrows lifted slightly. A bank notification. Her account balance had increased by a very, very impressive number. Below it was a short message. For your expenses. Ethan Gray. Lily stared at the screen for 3 full seconds. Then she smiled slowly. Efficient man, she murmured. No drama. No lectures. Just money. She liked this arrangement very much. Instead of rushing to go shopping like the original Lily would have, she calmly opened her laptop and began researching investment options. If she was going to live in this world, she might as well make the money grow. By noon, Lily appeared downstairs dressed in a simple but elegant cream dress. Her makeup was light, her posture relaxed, her entire aura quietly refined. The house staff exchanged subtle glances. Madam, seemed different lately. In the living room, Margaret Gray was already seated, flipping through a fashion magazine with her usual sharp expression. The moment she saw Lily, her lips tightened slightly. Sit, Margaret said coolly. Lily obeyed without protest and took the seat opposite her. Margaret studied her carefully. Yesterday's calm attitude could be an act. But today, Lily still looked composed, unhurried. Not a trace of the desperate clinginess from before. Margaret decided to test her. There is a family lunch this weekend, she said. Important guests will attend. A pause. In the past, your behavior has been embarrassing. The insult was obvious. In the original memories, Lily had indeed made several social blunders trying too hard to please Ethan. But the current Lily only gave a small nod. I understand. Margaret frowned slightly. Too calm. Very suspicious. She continued coldly, I hope you won't disgrace the Gray family again. Lily finally looked up. Her eyes were clear, steady, and surprisingly confident. I won't, she said simply. No defensiveness. No panic. Just quiet certainty. Margaret's fingers paused on the magazine page. Before she could probe further, footsteps approached from the hallway. Ethan Gray had returned. He walked into the living room, loosening his cufflinks slightly, his presence instantly lowering the temperature in the room by several degrees. His gaze swept across the space. And stopped briefly on Lily. Again. That tiny pause did not escape Margaret's sharp eyes. Ethan sat down on the single sofa, his tone indifferent. What are you discussing? Margaret closed the magazine. The family lunch this weekend. Ethan gave a short nod, clearly not very interested. But then, Lily spoke. I'll attend properly, she said calmly. Both mother and son looked at her. Ethan's eyes narrowed almost imperceptibly. This woman. Yesterday she asked for money without shame. Today she was promising proper behavior without flattery. It didn't match the information he had about her at all. Margaret let out a quiet hum. We'll see. The atmosphere grew quiet again. Lily was just about to excuse herself when her phone suddenly rang. The caller ID made her expression freeze for half a second. Daniel Carter. Her so-called younger brother. She answered. Before she could speak, A loud, impatient male voice burst through the phone. "Sis. I'm broke again. Transfer me 50,000. Not a greeting. Not even basic politeness. Just a demand." Margaret's brows instantly furrowed. Ethan's gaze sharpened slightly. Lily, however, remained completely calm. "No," she said. The other end went silent. Clearly, Daniel had not expected rejection. "What do you mean no?" he snapped. "You married into the Gray family. Don't tell me you can't afford it." Lily's voice stayed cool and flat. "My money is not your ATM." Click. She hung up cleanly. The living room fell into stunned silence. Margaret looked genuinely surprised. Because in the past, Lily Carter would have transferred the money immediately. Every single time. But now, she had refused without hesitation. Grandma Gray, who had quietly walked in unnoticed, watched Lily with growing interest. Ethan leaned back slowly, his deep gaze fixed on his wife. For the third time in 2 days, he felt something was very wrong. Or perhaps, very interesting. Lily stood gracefully. "If there's nothing else, I'll go prepare for the weekend lunch." She turned and walked upstairs without waiting for permission, her back straight, steps unhurried. Composed. Detached. Almost untouchable. After she disappeared, Grandma Gray suddenly chuckled softly. Margaret looked at her mother-in-law in confusion. But Grandma only smiled mysteriously and said, "This girl might not be as useless as you think." Across the room, Ethan's eyes remained on the staircase long after Lily had gone. Dark. Thoughtful. And for the first time, quietly intrigued. The Gray family mansion was unusually quiet that morning. Lily Carter sat by the window in the small study attached to her bedroom, her laptop open, several financial charts glowing on the screen. Sunlight filtered through the sheer curtains, casting soft light over her calm face. She had spent the last 2 days doing one thing: making money grow. The allowance Ethan transferred was generous, more than generous, actually, but Lily had no intention of treating it like pocket money. In her previous life, she had worked herself half to death just to save a few thousand. Now that fate had handed her capital on a silver platter, she would use it properly. Her fingers moved quickly across the keyboard. Click. Confirm. Investment placed. Lily leaned back slightly, satisfied. At this rate, even if the marriage collapsed one day, she would still walk away comfortably rich. Perfect. Just as she was about to close the laptop, the bedroom door opened. Lily looked up. Ethan Gray stood at the doorway. For a brief second, neither of them spoke. This was the first time he had come to her room since she arrived in this world. Lily remained seated, completely composed. "Something you need?" she asked politely. Ethan's gaze shifted to the laptop screen before returning to her face. "You trade stocks?" he asked. His tone was neutral, but his eyes were sharp. Lily didn't bother hiding it. "A little." Ethan stepped further into the room, his long legs carrying him effortlessly across the floor. He stopped beside her desk and glanced at the still-open portfolio. Then his brows lifted slightly. Not because she was losing money, but because she wasn't. In fact, every move on the screen was precise. Clean. Rational. Not the reckless gambling he had expected. "Interesting. You understand market timing," he said quietly. Not a question. An observation. Lily closed the laptop gently. "Basic risk control," she replied. Simple. Modest. Unpretentious. But Ethan did not move. His gaze lingered on her face, as if trying to peel back layers she wasn't showing. Before the silence could stretch further, he finally spoke again. "There's a charity gala tonight." Lily blinked once. Plot memory triggered. In the original timeline, this gala had been a disaster for the former Lily. She had clung to Ethan all night, made several social mistakes, and became a laughingstock in high society. Margaret had been furious for weeks afterward. But this time, Lily's lips curved slightly. "I'll attend properly," she said. Ethan studied her for 2 seconds longer. Then he gave a short nod and left. But his steps were noticeably slower than when he arrived. That evening, The grand hotel ballroom glittered with crystal lights and soft classical music. Wealthy elites moved gracefully across the marble floor, champagne glasses in hand. When Ethan Gray entered, the atmosphere subtly shifted. He was, as always, the center of attention. Tall, cold, untouchable. But tonight, there was someone beside him. Lily Carter walked calmly at his side. She wore a simple silver evening gown, elegant without being flashy. Her hair fell softly over her shoulders, and her expression remained peacefully composed. No clinging. No nervousness. No desperate attempts to seek Ethan's attention. It was as if she was perfectly comfortable standing beside one of the most powerful men in the city. Whispers immediately began spreading. "Is that Mrs. Gray? She seems different. She looks much more refined than before." Across the ballroom, a sharp pair of eyes locked onto Lily. Sophia Gray had arrived. Dressed in a striking red gown, she was beautiful, confident, and clearly displeased. She walked over smoothly, her smile polite but her eyes cold. "Ethan," she greeted warmly, as if Lily didn't exist. Ethan gave a faint nod. "You're back." Sophia's gaze finally shifted to Lily. "Oh," she said lightly, "Mrs. Gray is here too." The tone was gentle. The implication was not. In the past, Lily would have already looked flustered. But now, Lily simply smiled politely. "Miss Sophia." Graceful. Calm. Unbothered. Sophia's smile stiffened slightly. Strike one. Not long after, the three of them were drawn into a small social circle. Conversation flowed smoothly until one of the socialites suddenly asked, with clear curiosity, "Mrs. Gray, I heard you've been staying at home recently. That must be quite relaxing." The hidden mockery was obvious. Translation: "You're just a useless rich wife." Sophia's eyes gleamed faintly. Everyone was waiting to see Lily stumble. Instead, Lily took a slow sip of champagne and answered calmly, "Managing assets also requires effort." The group went quiet. Sophia's smile froze. Ethan's eyes darkened slightly, because that answer was sharp, elegant, and quietly confident. The atmosphere shifted. For the first time that evening, Ethan's hand moved subtly, resting lightly at Lily's back, not intimate, but unmistakably protective. It lasted only a second. But the entire circle noticed. Including Lily. Her fingers tightened slightly around the champagne glass. Inside her calm mind, one thought appeared very clearly. This man is starting to pay attention. And that was slightly dangerous. The peaceful days did not last long. 3 days after the gala, the calm atmosphere at the Gray Mansion was shattered by a loud argument at the front entrance. "I'm telling you, I'm her brother. Move aside." Lily had just finished reviewing market reports when the noise drifted upstairs. She paused mid-scroll, her expression turning flat. He actually came. Some people truly had no sense of shame. By the time Lily walked downstairs, the scene in the living room was already tense. Daniel Carter stood near the entrance, his clothes slightly wrinkled, his face full of impatience. 2 house staff members looked extremely uncomfortable trying to block him. Margaret Gray sat stiffly on the sofa, her expression darker than thunder. Grandma Gray watched quietly from the side, eyes thoughtful. And Ethan. He stood near the window, silent and unreadable. The moment Daniel spotted Lily, his face lit up like he had seen a walking ATM. "Sis." Finally. He strode forward. "I've been calling you for days. Why didn't you pick up?" Lily stopped a few steps away, completely calm. "I was busy." Daniel frowned, clearly displeased by her cool tone. "Well, whatever. I need money urgently. Just transfer me $200,000. The living room fell silent. Even the staff froze. Margaret's lips curled in cold disdain. As expected. Low-class family. In the original timeline, Lily would have already panicked and rushed to help. But now, Lily didn't even blink. "No." One simple word. Daniel's face immediately darkened. "What do you mean no?" he snapped, voice rising. "You married into the Gray family. Are you really this stingy with your own brother?" Margaret let out a cold laugh. How embarrassing. The insult was deliberate. The pressure in the room quietly mounted. Everyone was watching Lily, waiting to see if she would crumble. Instead, Lily stepped forward slowly, her posture straight, her voice calm but firm. "Daniel," she said evenly, "I helped you many times before. Did it solve your problems?" Daniel froze slightly, because the answer was obvious. "No." Lily continued, her tone cool and rational. "If you want money, earn it. I'm not your lifelong sponsor." Her words were clean, sharp, final. Daniel's face flushed red with anger. "You." Before he could explode further, Ethan finally moved. He stepped forward slightly, his tall figure instantly creating pressure in the room. His voice was low and calm, but carried unmistakable authority. "Mr. Carter." Daniel stiffened instinctively. Ethan's gaze was cold. "This is the Grey residence." The implication was crystal clear. Behave. Or leave. Daniel's momentum instantly deflated. No matter how shameless he was, he still knew who he couldn't afford to offend. He shot Lily a resentful look. "Fine. Don't regret it later." With that, he turned and stormed out. The front door slammed shut. Silence returned to the living room. But the tension did not. Margaret's sharp gaze landed on Lily immediately. "So this is your family," she said coldly. In the past, this kind of pressure would have crushed the original Lily. But now, Lily stood calmly in the center of the room, neither defensive nor ashamed. "My family's problems are mine to handle," she said quietly. "They won't affect the Grey family." Margaret narrowed her eyes. This answer was unexpectedly mature. Before she could respond, Grandma Grey suddenly chuckled softly. "Well said." Margaret turned slightly, surprised. Grandma Grey looked at Lily with clear approval now. A person who knows how to draw boundaries is not foolish. The living room atmosphere shifted subtly. Margaret's expression became more complicated. She didn't praise Lily. But for the first time, she also didn't criticize her further. Lily gave a small respectful nod. "Thank you, Grandma." The matter should have ended there. But that night, something unexpected happened. Near midnight, the mansion was quiet. Lily stood alone on the small balcony outside her bedroom, the city lights flickering in the distance. Her face was calm. Too calm. Because only she knew. When Daniel appeared earlier, a fragment of the original owner's emotions had surged unexpectedly in her chest. Leftover grief. Leftover disappointment. Family wounds were always the deepest. She exhaled slowly, steadying herself. "I'm not her," Lily murmured softly. But the night breeze carried a faint chill. Behind her, the balcony door suddenly slid open. Lily turned. Ethan Grey stood there. For once, he was not in formal wear, just a simple dark shirt, his expression quieter than usual. Their eyes met. Neither spoke for 2 seconds. Then Ethan's gaze dropped briefly to her face. "You were crying?" he asked. Lily blinked. She hadn't even noticed the faint moisture at the corner of her eyes. Troublesome. She quickly looked away. "Just the wind," she said lightly. A poor excuse. Ethan clearly didn't believe it. But for the first time, he didn't expose her. Instead, he stepped closer, his voice lower than usual. "If anyone bullies you again," he said slowly, "tell me." Lily froze. The night air suddenly felt very different. Because that sentence was dangerously close to concern. And concern was the beginning of something far more complicated. After that night on the balcony, something in the Grey mansion quietly changed. Not obvious. Not dramatic. But impossible to ignore. Ethan Grey began coming home earlier. At first, it was subtle, 30 minutes earlier than usual. Then an hour. Then, on one particularly shocking evening, he was already seated in the living room before dinner. The house staff noticed immediately. So did Margaret. And Lily noticed most of all. She sat across from Ethan at the long dining table, eating calmly, but inside her mind was already sounding warning bells. Danger. High-level emotional danger. Because the man across from her was no longer completely indifferent. He wasn't warm. He wasn't gentle. But his attention had weight now. And weight meant risk. Lily lowered her eyes and reminded herself firmly. This is just business. Just business. Just. You're distracted. Ethan's deep voice cut cleanly across the table. Lily's chopsticks paused mid-air. She looked up slowly. I'm not. Ethan's gaze rested on her for a second longer than necessary. His expression remained calm, but there was a faint sharpness in his eyes now, the look of a man who was observing very carefully. You've been checking your phone every 3 minutes, he said evenly. Lily. Was he secretly installing surveillance on her? She placed her chopsticks down neatly. Market fluctuation, she replied. Technically true. This morning, one of her investments had started moving strangely. She wasn't worried about losses, she was worried about manipulation. Ethan leaned back slightly. Show me. The 2 simple words stunned her. Lily blinked once. You want to see? His expression was flat. You are using Grey family money, he said calmly. I should at least know the risk level. Logical. Reasonable. Annoyingly hard to refuse. After a brief pause, Lily turned her phone screen toward him. Ethan glanced down. Then. His eyes narrowed almost imperceptibly. Because what he saw was not amateur-level trading. It was clean. Precise. And extremely controlled. You noticed the artificial volume spike, he said quietly. Not a question. A statement. Lily's fingers tightened slightly. Sharp. Very sharp. She gave a small nod. Someone is trying to lure retail investors. Ethan's gaze finally lifted back to her face. For the first time. There was clear approval in his eyes. Your judgment isn't bad. Simple praise. But coming from Ethan Gray, it carried unusual weight. Lily immediately looked away. Danger level rising. This man was getting too close to her professional comfort zone. Unfortunately, peaceful days never lasted long. 2 days later, trouble exploded. It happened during a high-level Grey Group internal meeting. Lily had only gone to deliver documents Ethan forgot at home, purely out of courtesy and basic professionalism. But the moment she stepped into the executive floor, she knew something was wrong. The atmosphere was too tense. Too many strange looks. Before she could process further, Sophia Gray appeared from the conference room, her expression perfectly composed, but her eyes held a faint, hidden smile. Sister-in-law, Sophia said gently, you came at the right time. Lily's instincts immediately sharpened. Right time? That phrase was never good news. Inside the conference room, several senior executives were already present. Margaret was there too, her expression extremely cold. Ethan sat at the head of the table, his face unreadable. The moment Lily entered, Margaret spoke sharply. Lily Carter. Lily stopped calmly. Margaret's voice was icy. The investment account under your name, why is it connected to a company currently under Grey Group investigation? The room went dead silent. Sophia lowered her eyes slightly, hiding the flash of satisfaction within them. Hook set. Lily's pupils shrank slightly. Ah. So that was the game. Someone had deliberately linked her trading account to a problematic company. A frame-up. Clean. Professional. Dangerous. All eyes were on her now. Waiting. Judging. Doubting. For a brief moment, even the air felt heavy. Then Lily lifted her head slowly. Her voice was calm. Because someone wanted it to look that way. Murmurs broke out. Margaret's face darkened. You still dare to argue? But before pressure could mount further, a deep male voice cut through the room. Enough. Everyone froze. Ethan Gray leaned forward slightly, his gaze cold and absolute. I reviewed the transaction path, he said calmly. Sophia's fingers tightened almost invisibly. No way. Ethan's eyes swept across the table before landing firmly on Lily. Then he spoke the sentence that shocked the entire room. Her account was tampered with. Silence. Total silence. Margaret looked stunned. Several executives exchanged shocked glances. And Lily. For the first time since transmigrating. Her heartbeat skipped. Because Ethan had chosen to trust her. Without hesitation. Without public pressure. Without even asking her to defend herself first. Across the room, Sophia's face finally stiffened. The game had just turned. And Lily suddenly realized something very dangerous. Her carefully built emotional walls had just developed their first crack. The conference room incident spread through the Grey group faster than wildfire. Within one day, everyone knew two things. First, someone had tried to frame Mrs. Grey. Second, Ethan Grey had publicly protected his wife. The impact of the second point was far greater than the first. Because Ethan Grey did not protect people. Especially not his wife. 3 days later, the truth surfaced. The tampered transaction trail led cleanly back to Sophia's assistant. Under pressure, the assistant confessed quickly. The room was silent when the report was placed in front of Margaret. Margaret's face was darker than anyone had ever seen. Sophia stood nearby, her elegant composure finally cracking at the edges. "I didn't know the assistant would act on her own," she said quickly, voice tight but still trying to sound reasonable. A weak defense. Everyone present knew it. Margaret's gaze was sharp as a blade. "You didn't know," she repeated coldly. Sophia's lips pressed together. For the first time since returning to the country, she looked cornered. Across the room, Lily sat quietly beside Ethan, her posture relaxed, her expression calm as still water. She did not press. Did not gloat. Did not add fuel to the fire. That restraint only made the contrast sharper. Grandma Grey suddenly chuckled softly. "Well," the old lady said mildly, "truth has its own way of surfacing." Sophia's face flushed. Margaret closed the report slowly. Then, for the first time ever, she looked directly at Lily with something other than cold dismissal. "You handled this matter properly," Margaret said. It wasn't warm. It wasn't gentle. But coming from Margaret Grey, it was practically high praise. Lily inclined her head politely. "Thank you." No arrogance. No lingering resentment. Just calm acceptance. Margaret studied her for 2 seconds longer, her expression complicated. This daughter-in-law was not what she had expected. Not at all. That night, the Grey mansion was unusually quiet. Lily stood in her bedroom, looking down at the document in her hands. Divorce agreement. Clean. Neat. Already signed on her side. She had prepared it 2 days ago. Because she remembered her original rule very clearly. Secure financial stability. Avoid emotional entanglement. Leave cleanly when the time comes. Now. The time had come. Her investments were stable. Her personal assets were more than enough. And Ethan was getting too close. Dangerously close. Lily exhaled slowly, steadying herself, then walked toward the study. The door was half open. Inside, Ethan sat behind his desk, reviewing documents under the soft glow of the desk lamp. He looked up the moment she entered. Their eyes met. For a second, something unspoken passed between them. Lily stepped forward and placed the divorce papers gently on the desk. "I think," she said calmly, "our arrangement has reached a good stopping point." Silence fell instantly. Ethan's gaze dropped to the document. Then froze. The air in the room changed. Subtly. Dangerously. "You want a divorce?" he asked quietly. Lily kept her voice steady. It was always a business marriage. Logical. Reasonable. Perfectly consistent with her behavior from the start. But for some reason, the temperature around Ethan dropped several degrees. He did not touch the papers. Did not flip them open. Instead, his dark eyes lifted slowly to her face. For the first time since they met, there was something unmistakably sharp in his gaze. "You planned this from the beginning," he said. Not a question. A realization. Lily didn't deny it. Yes. One word. Clean and decisive. Something in Ethan's expression finally shifted. Not anger. Not exactly. But the calm, controlled CEO mask was cracking. He stood up slowly. Tall. Oppressive. His presence filled the space between them in 2 long steps. Lily's heartbeat betrayed her for half a second. Annoying. Very annoying. Ethan stopped directly in front of her. Too close. Much too close. His voice dropped lower than she had ever heard it. So, he said quietly, you took the money. And now you want to run? Lily lifted her chin slightly, forcing herself to stay calm. This was our agreement. Ethan stared at her for a long moment. Then suddenly, his hand moved. Not to take the papers, but to gently catch her wrist. Warm. Firm. Impossible to ignore. Lily's breath hitched. Traitorous body. Ethan's voice was no longer completely calm. You're wrong about one thing, he said. Lily's eyes flickered. What? For the first time. The always controlled Ethan Gray spoke without perfect restraint. This stopped being just business. His fingers tightened slightly around her wrist. A long time ago. Silence crashed between them. Lily's carefully built emotional walls. Finally. Visibly cracked. Because for the first time since transmigrating, she wasn't sure she wanted to walk away. 1 month later, the Gray family held a private dinner. This time, when Lily sat at the table. Margaret did not criticize her. Grandma Gray openly smiled at her. Even the household staff treated her with warm respect. And at the head of the table, Ethan Gray calmly placed a small velvet box in front of her. Inside was not a new wedding ring, but a key to the Gray family's private investment division. Lily looked up. Ethan met her gaze steadily. Partner, he asked. Lily stared at the key for 2 seconds. Then, slowly smiled. After all, money was honest. But this time, so was the man beside her. The unloved wife had quietly won everything.